I'm dedicating this movie to Jopie of the Dutch Philosophy Forums, who asked me to make a post there about Baudrillard, but I was too lazy to do it, so I hope this will make up for it. Most people are introduced to Baudrillard's thinking when they see the 1999 cult classic The Matrix. Now there is a scene at the beginning of this movie where the main character Neo grabs a book off a shelf, and when he opens it there is a floppy inside. Now the cover of the book reads Simulacra and Simulations, which is a hidden reference to Baudrillard's thinking. Now when you're looking at the Matrix, it is easier to read the Matrix through a Platonic view than it is to view it through Baudrillard's lens, because Baudrillard's thinking has much more profound consequences than is portrayed in the Matrix. In Plato's Tale of the Cave, there are prisoners kept imprisoned in a cave. They have been there all their lives. Now there's a fire in the back of the cave which projects images on the wall where the prisoners are all looking at. They have no way to turn around, all they can see is the wall. Now when there's a shadow of a tree on the wall, they think that is the real tree because they know nothing more than that. And one day a prisoner is freed and he goes outside the caves, he sees colors, he sees real trees, and he is actually experienced the really real. Now this is basically the tale of Neo, because that's what he does. He comes to the conclusion in the back of his mind that something is wrong with the world, and then he is released from that world by Morpheus, who shows him the real world. Now Baudrillard cannot be read in this way. Baudrillard is way more pessimistic about his view about reality, in which he basically says that reality is so far away from us that there is no actual way of recovering it. So there's no magical experience that can suddenly reveal the world to us as it really is, because reality altogether has disappeared. The brain naturally cannot distinguish between the true and the false. It only sees things as they are, but of course the mind filters certain things to make the entire world coherent to us so we can understand it, but we can always just understand it by using our mind. There's no objective way to come to any knowledge. All knowledge goes through the mind. Now this brings us to the first key concept in Baudrillard's thinking, which is impossible exchange, which is to say that the world cannot be exchanged for anything. If you're using language, a tree, the word, the concept, the image in the mind of a tree is not the actual tree. There's no way to really see the tree as it is. The world for Baudrillard is fundamentally unknowable. He thinks everything is basically irrational. Stuff just happens. There is a certain discomfort with that, because people feel uncomfortable when they are confronted with questions of where the universe came from. So what they try to do is make models of simulation which explain the world to people in a closed system. For example, Christianity or anything you want to call it. Now in our time there is a massive attempt to create a virtual double of the real world, which is not just virtual reality as in computer generated reality, but a reality created by applying language and science in such a way to make the model appear as though it is the real thing. So we have all these social sciences, psychology, all trying to create an objective reality which we use as measurement, but there is no grounding for this reality at all. It's just a model floating in space. Primitive people, when confronted by the fact of their existence, try to symbolically pay for this fact by paying tribute to the gods. Now in our time this is regarded as silly superstition, so all we have left is a grand economic system in which we all participate to consume as much as possible. Now that's where Baudrillard departs from Marx, because for Marx it was all about production, while for Baudrillard it's all about consumption. When you think of consumption in this regard, you shouldn't just see consumption as the consumption of food or computers or anything. You should regard it as the consumption of science, which is much more important than just the functional value of an object. So for example, food you can eat, which is its use value, or a computer you can watch YouTube on or whatever. Now, for Baudrillard, the sign value is much more important. So you don't just buy a computer to use it, but you also buy a computer in order to prove to the others captured in the system, to make them believe that you're participating in it and have a certain status in it. This logic is inescapable. Consider, for example, the books behind me. Why do you think they are there? Because I want to demonstrate I've read them, or because I want to impress you intellectually? So all the stuff that you're seeing in your frame, this shirt, my hair, the books, are all there to show my status within the existing system of consumption. The reason why you're thinking about this now is probably because you have become to regard it as normal that it is this way, and that is the point of the entire system, to make us believe that this is real and normal, while in fact it's an unsustainable form of life on this planet. The hyperreal that has replaced the real attempts to make us think that we're living in this world of infinite wealth without any real catastrophes to threat it, but nothing is further from the truth. Another commenter on Baudrillard on YouTube, Zorio, has in his profile a good quote which is relevant here. It's a quote by Derrida in which basically he says that you cannot say that here are the monsters without turning them into pets. The same is true for catastrophes. For example, with China, the latest earthquake, this catastrophe is neutralized by repeating it on television over and over again. Everything is neutralized by being reproduced endlessly, copy after copy after copy. The same is true for 9/11. And what do people do when they are confronted with a catastrophe like this? They do what they only know to be doing, which is to consume. When 9/11 happened, a couple of hours after the event, I saw on television these people walking with "Fuck Bin Laden" t-shirts. So everything is recuperated by buying stuff. This is the only means of exchange within our system. So what do people do when confronted with China? They donate to charity. What do people do when confronted with ecological disaster, oil running out, poor children in Africa? They donate to charity. This is the only thing they know to be doing. Exchange any event for money. This gigantic simulation is being sustained by certain points of recovery for the hyperreal. Consider, for example, Disneyland. Disneyland is there to make us believe that Disneyland is the unreal world, and while we're living in the real world. But of course, the only true thing is that Disneyland is actually more real than our world, because Disneyland doesn't pretend to be more than it actually is, a theme park. While in our world we pretend that we are being normal and still among a reality principle, while in fact we are living unreal lives. What escape is there from this system? Is there some magical pill we can take to flee from it? According to Baudrillard, there is no escape. The only thing we can perhaps hope for is the physical collapse of the structures that keep this metaphysical reality intact. Or, as Baudrillard would say it, if we can challenge the system with a gift on which it cannot answer, but with its own collapse.